Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 347. We're doing our Week 10 NFL picks against the spread for the 2021 NFL season. Joined once again by Jacob Kamiker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you, and how is your Week 9?
I'm doing pretty well right now. My Week 9, I apologize to anyone who followed me for the most part. I went a cool 4-10 against the spread last week. Had a nice big hit on the Chiefs-Packers game. I actually middled that one. I bet the Chiefs -1 right when the news of Aaron Rodgers being out kind of hit. And then as soon as the line shot up to Packers +7.5, I was like, I want in on that too. So we got a nice a 6-point margin there, so hit both of those. But the rest of the week was pretty abysmal outside of the Bears covering on Monday night. Hopefully we'll bounce back a little bit this week, but I don't think I was terrible last week. Just got some unlucky results and a very, very bizarre week. So we'll see how I do this week. But how are you doing? How was your week?
Actually, not that bad. I think I went 8-6 overall, 3-2 in the Super Contest. The big loss, though, the only big loss I had was Houston failing to cover at +6 against the Dolphins. Houston had 4 trips inside the red zone, and they had a field goal from the 1-yard line and an interception at the beginning of the game, and yet they almost covered. Tyrod Taylor threw that short toss right before overtime, right to the Miami player. It was just so frustrating. But the other ones hit, so I was pretty happy about those. And I had a theory about why we had so many upsets. As you can see, Tom says Bills and Cowboys, WTF. There's so many upsets. Rams too. Rams lost outright. Steelers almost lost outright. It was kind of a bloodbath for these high favorites. And my theory is, maybe I'm completely wrong here, but I once heard that players and coaches always break up the NFL season in quarters. So, they always go if we go 3-1 in each quarter, we go 12-4 and we do well. I've heard that sometimes. And this was the midway point of the season. And for a lot of these big favorites, they've had good records. They've won a lot of games. And so it was the end of a quarter and the end of a half. And they're like, okay, we've had a good record so far. We don't need to win this game to meet our, standard for winning in a quarter/half. So I think they kind of took these bad teams less seriously, but that's my theory. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, that actually makes sense to me. And also, this NFL season's weird because we have the 17-game schedule. So we're at the Week 9 mark, which, as you mentioned, is the midway point of the season. But some teams will also think oh, but we're playing our 9th game, so we're past the midpoint. So they're kind of all discombobulated. Tom Brady said today he was pretty upset that there was a 17th game added, or he was it's terrible. Why did they do that? So maybe the rhythm of the NFL season is just a little screwed up. So as some teams approach their 9th game, they're kind of oh, this is the halfway point. We don't have to win, like you said. So I can see that. That makes some sense to me.
Yeah, wait till Brady gets to play an 18th game in a couple of years. He's not going to be too happy about that. All right, so we'll get to the games. Before we do, hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description to the merch store. All that would help us out a lot. I think we're closing in on 2,700 subscribers, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's kick things off with the Ravens at the Dolphins. This line opened up Ravens -7.5. It's still 7.5. So yeah, who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I've gotten burned on 7.5s this year, but I'm leaning on the Ravens here. Not a big bet on this one. I say I won't bet it. I will, but I wouldn't recommend betting it. On one hand, I think the Ravens are a little bit overrated, as they showed against the Vikings this past week coming out of a bye. A lot of people thought, hey, they're going to dominate the Vikings. They're going to be in good shape. And they kind of went back and forth with the Vikings. They were trailing by 14 points in the second half, made a nice comeback. Won in overtime. It's their 3rd overtime game of the year, though. And they've played some overtime games against teams like the Raiders, who are okay, but not the greatest. And then the Vikings also in that category. I know you brought up a stat last week. I can't remember the exact numbers, but teams that play in overtime and then play on Thursday Night Football have a terrible record against the spread. And the Colts actually beat that trend last week, albeit barely, because Josh Johnson had a chance for an insane backdoor cover at the end. But that he had a pass get picked off that was tipped at the line of scrimmage, so couldn't quite get that one. But I think if the Dolphins were a better team, I'd probably be on them at 7.5, but they're just not very good. They don't have Tua Tagovailoa right now. I worry about how they're going to stop the ground game for the Ravens. And I know Tua hasn't been great this year, but Jacoby Brissett hasn't been great either. Like, they just put 17 points up on the Texans. I'm assuming the Ravens are going to play better defense than that. Maybe they tire at the end like the Colts did and let in some extra points in the end that could cause a backdoor cover here. I could see it happening, but I can't back a bad team, so I'm going to go with the Ravens here. But again, I wouldn't recommend betting this one because there are some dueling trends here, and I just don't like the idea of a 7.5 in this game. But the better team tends to win on Thursday night. I think it's pretty clear that the Ravens are that right now.
Yeah, for sure. Although I think the Ravens are a little overrated right now, except for Lamar Jackson, who's playing unreal. I thought a couple years ago, I actually thought Lamar Jackson shouldn't have won MVP. I thought it should have been Russell Wilson because Wilson played with a much worse team than Jackson did. But like now, I feel like except for Kyler Murray, I think Jackson is the MVP right now, just based on how well he's playing. Like he just dominated in that second half against the Vikings. But the rest of this Baltimore team is just not very good. Like they can't block very well. They're missing 2 offensive linemen. Their running game isn't that good. Like Devontae Freeman, I don't expect him to do very well. They're missing a lot of tackles and they're allowing a lot of big plays to happen. And we saw that with Justin Jefferson hitting that 50-yarder. Dalvin Cook had a 66-yard run. I feel like the Dolphins could get some big plays. You know, Jalen Waddle could break a run, run after the catch, I should say. Mike Gesicki could have some nice receptions, and then Myles Gaskin, they're forced to use him. So, you know, he could have some big gains. And so I think this is going to be closer than people think. Like a lot of people are betting on Baltimore, but I think Miami is the right side, especially with Baltimore coming off that overtime. That number is 4-24 against the spread. Teams coming off overtimes, playing on Thursday with the other team not coming off overtimes. And yeah, the Colts covered, but Mike White got hurt in that game. So I don't know how that would have gone if Mike White stayed healthy. And so I like the Dolphins here. You know, Jacoby Brissett is pretty bad, but he's not that bad against the blitz, and Baltimore blitzes a lot. So I think Miami could hang around. I think they could get a backdoor cover if they need it. Actually, that's probably the most likely thing to happen. I think Baltimore's going to be up by like 10-14, but they can't put teams away because they have trouble blocking and they can't tackle very well. So yeah, I'm going to be on Miami, but I'm not in love with this game. I just think the Dolphins are the right side.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I can understand why you would pick them in this spot. Like I said, I don't like the line for the Ravens. I just think that they're slightly better, and I don't want to have to trust the Dolphins offense. Like on the off chance that the Ravens, you know, jump out to like a 28-0 lead, like Miami could still cover in that standpoint, but it becomes a lot harder. So yeah, but after what I saw from the Colts last week, where like the fourth quarter, they had that big lead and just decided to, you know, stop playing basically and let the Jets kind of work their way back in. Nothing would surprise me about this game. So I think there are a lot of better spots on this slate to bet than this one. Maybe if the line changes here, I'll have different thoughts, but I don't think it's going to change much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel too strongly about this. Yeah, that comeback at the end last Thursday, my dad was freaking out because I didn't bet the game, but my dad did. He bet the Colts, and he was like, "They're about to score, and that interception happened on that tip pass. It's like, so he was pretty thankful about that. Chris Henderson asks, "Does Tony Corrente rig games?" He was the ref in Chargers Cowboys in week 2, which is another shady game. So we were talking about this before we started recording. I've heard the opinion, like some people are like, "Oh, no way, NFL games are rigged," and I'm thinking like, wasn't Tim Donaghy rigging games in basketball? So it could definitely happen. Although I should say, like, I think it was more Monday night was more of just incompetence than rigging because allowing that drive to continue actually helped the Bears. I feel like because it kept the drive going. And that allowed them to cover the spread easily, you know, whereas if they had more time, maybe they throw a pick six, they have more time to throw a pick six or something. So it helped the Steelers money line, but not the points.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we can't prove if anything's rigged or not, but that was just poor officiating from Corrente. That whole drive, the taunting call was bogus. Then you had the call where James Daniels was called for a illegal low block where it wouldn't have been legal if he made contact and didn't even make contact on the play. And then Justin Fields was hit twice in a row and like was clearly roughed on at least one of them. One of them you could make the case like, all right, he's a ball carrier, he wasn't hitting the head. But the one of them was clearly roughing. They didn't call it. So I don't know what they were doing last night, but it was real shady. And the Bears constantly got screwed by penalty calls. So definitely weird. I'm going to have to keep a close eye on Tony Corrente moving forward for sure.
Yeah, I think the most likely thing you could come to a conclusion with is saying Tony Correnti is just a Steeler fan, and he wanted the Steelers to win, right? Not that it was rigged, that he just liked the Steelers, but we don't know anything. So, moving on to the Sunday slate, the Jaguars at the Colts. The line opened up Colts minus 10.5. It's down to 10. So there's some money coming in on the Jaguars, which is surprising, although maybe not because they won last week. So, who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Colts in this one. I don't think the Jaguars are going to get lightning to strike twice. I think this might just be crazy, but they benefited from the Manning cast curse last night. Josh Allen was. I mentioned that last week. I was like, the only way the Jaguars could possibly win this game is if the Manning cast curse comes to life. And maybe it's not actually a curse thing, but the Bills looked so inept in that game, and the Jaguars, their offense didn't play well. Their defense did really well against Josh Allen with their own Josh Allen getting a pick, a sack, I think a fumble recovery. That was pretty entertaining. I very much enjoyed watching Josh Allen versus Josh Allen. But anyway, I don't think this number is great. When it was at 10.5, I didn't love it. 10 is fine. But I think the Colts, you look at this, the matchup favors Frank Reich and the Colts. They're coming off of a win over the Jets. They had extra time to rest. They're kind of getting things moving in the right direction. They'll be a little bit healthier. But I just don't think that the Jaguars are going to be able to keep pace with the Colts offense. I think Jonathan Taylor will run well in this game. Carson Wentz played much better against the Colts than he did against the Titans. And even against the Titans, he wasn't terrible. He just had 2 awful interceptions. If he avoids the turnovers, they should be fine. I think the one thing to worry about is if Josh Allen with the Jaguars gets a lot of pressure on Wentz and maybe could force him into a turnover, kind of create a situation where the Jaguars are up early or are able to make up some points late and get a backdoor cover. I don't think it's going to be a problem, though. The Jaguars' offense hasn't been good. They scored 9 against the Bills. The Colts have a pretty good defense. I know they allowed a lot of points to the Jets, but like we mentioned, they were tired at the end of that game after having played an overtime game and another whole game in basically a 4 or 5 day span. So I'm not worried about this. I'm going to be on the Colts for 1 unit here. Only concern is they could look ahead to a playoff rematch against the Bills, but I don't think that's going to matter too much because the Colts don't have much margin for error. So I don't see them overlooking the Jaguars. I also don't see Urban Meyer's team being motivated after a win. They're going to milk this for all it's worth based off what I know. Last time they had a win, they had a whole bye week and then almost got shut out by the Seahawks led by Geno Smith. So don't have much faith in them doing well against the Colts.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm with you on the Colts here. Usually bad teams coming off wins are kind of a recipe for disaster, especially huge upset victories. I feel like the Jaguars are going to be a little deflated, even though this is the divisional game. You make a good point about the Colts maybe looking ahead to the Bills. That is definitely something that could happen, and that's probably the reason why I'm not going to bet this game, just because it is a possibility. Granted, like you said, the Colts can't afford to really look ahead, but still. If you're playing for the Colts, how do you take the Jaguars seriously, knowing that you have to play the Bills coming up next week? So that could be an issue. But given how the Jaguars played against the Bills, if they try that same thing, it's not going to work because the Colts are just going to ram it down their throat. And the Colts protect a lot better than the Bills do. Their offensive line is great. So I can't see Carson Wentz getting sacked by Josh Allen that often. Josh Allen had a great game against the other Josh Allen, but it's not going to repeat. I don't think. The Colts just should be able to run the ball nonstop, and the Colts tend to sit on these horrible teams. Every team they played this year with the losing record, they beaten by double digits. So I think that's going to happen again. So I like the Colts here, but like I said, they could look ahead to the Bills. So I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, I think that's the reason I'm not going to bet a lot on this game. I've got 1 unit on it because I think the Colts could go up 30-0 in this game and then take their foot off the gas, but they would easily cover if that happens. So I'm confident enough in them, but like you said, the look ahead factor is enough that I wouldn't recommend significantly wagering on this because it's a double-digit spread with look ahead, and those are not usually fun to bet on.
Yeah, I agree. Next one, Browns at the Patriots. This line opened up. There's a lot of weird line movement here. The Patriots opened up minus 1.5. It went down to pick 'em, and then in the past couple hours, it went up to Patriots minus 1.5 again. Looks like there's sharp money coming in on New England. So who do you like in this game?
Oh wow, I was on the Browns actually. These 2 teams are both underrated though, so I can see the case for either of them. But I think the Browns, they're getting healthier. They played better after Odell Beckham Jr.'s release. I know they probably kind of rallied around that from a motivational standpoint against the Bengals. Granted, that was a divisional game, so they were always going to be motivated. But the offense, I think, had the extra motivation to say, hey, like, we're going to just come out and show that we can succeed without Odell Beckham Jr. And Donovan Peoples-Jones had a great game. He had a 60-yard touchdown, I think, from Mayfield. So that played a part in it. I know the Browns are going to be shorthanded at running back in this game too, but Dearness Johnson showed earlier in the season that he can run the ball really well. And the Patriots have a shaky run defense. They've been good at times, but at other times they've struggled. So as long as he can keep some of the pressure off Baker Mayfield, they should be okay. I think they'll have a shot to win this one. The Patriots are also going to be down some running backs, I think, or, they're at least banged up right now. Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris, I think they're both dealing with head injuries, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. And the Patriots have a look ahead to Thursday Night Football, so if either of them are not 100%, they won't be around to take some of the pressure off Mac Jones, and I think that will matter against Myles Garrett because the Patriots' offensive line hasn't been performing as well as it normally does in recent weeks. Isaiah Wynn got crushed a few times by Brian Burns flying off the edge. So you best believe the Browns saw that and know that if we can get Myles Garrett in that matchup, he's going to do some damage against Jones. So the Browns are 1 units on this one. I'm not super confident in it because the Patriots have found ways to win. But I think right now, Cleveland, their defense is just really, really strong. And I think they're going to be able to use the running game to kind of control the game and keep the Patriots at bay. And we don't really know what's going to happen if we get into one of these close games and New England's down and Mac Jones has to make a game-winning drive. He's done well in those circumstances so far. Those have been very close games where they've needed a field goal. So if this is a touchdown deficit, I'm not sure I'm yet willing to back Mac Jones, though I really like what he's done so far.
Yeah, he's had a great start to his rookie year. But in the past couple of games, he's kind of hit a slump, I feel like. Against the Chargers, he had a stretch where he was like 2 of 12 or something like that. Like he just missed some throws. There were some drops in between, but like he made some bad passes. And then last week he had 2 turnovers, kind of got bailed out by Sam Darnold being a lot worse. Mac Jones has done well against these like bad pass defenses that, especially that don't blitz. But against the better pass defenses, he struggled, which you would expect from a rookie, and the Browns, they're healthy now and they have a better pass defense. You just saw them frustrate Joe Burrow. So I feel like they could do the same thing to Mac Jones. But on the other side, the Browns are down Nick Chubb. And I think that's significant. Like Dearness Johnson looked great in that Thursday night game. But he was playing against a very shorthanded Denver team that was missing his 2 inside linebackers. I feel like the Broncos didn't have enough time to prepare. I don't know if they took the Browns seriously because Case Keenum was starting. I feel like it was kind of a low effort game from Denver. And so I think that I don't see Dearness Johnson running as well against New England. It feels like New England does worse against pass catching running backs too. If the Browns had Kareem Hunt, that could really hurt the Patriots, but they don't. So I feel like Dearness Johnson being there instead of Nick Chubb is going to hurt the Browns. So I'm pretty torn on this game. I think based on the advanced spread, which was New England -3, I would have liked Cleveland here because I think, Cleveland by 3 or New England by 3 is probably the 2 most likely results of this game. And this is kind of somewhere in between. So I'm on the Browns with you. I don't have a good lean to this game. This is probably my least confident side this week. I just can't figure this game out.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. Like I said, these 2 teams are both very underrated. I think league wide, the Browns at the beginning of the year were almost overhyped. Then they suffered injuries, became overrated. Now they're getting healthy and are underrated. And then meanwhile, the Patriots, they're a few plays away from being probably 7-2. So, I mean, if we're talking about a 7-2 team, 7-2 Patriots against a fully healthy Browns team that had been fully healthy all year, this is probably a marquee matchup, and I don't know what the spread would be. But I'm interested to see how this one shakes out, but I get why you're not confident in it because I flip-flopped on this one a little bit before I finally was like, I think I'm going to take Cleveland's pass rush in this one.
Yeah, that's what I did. But yeah, like I said, I'm not confident, but I like this next game a lot more. Falcons at the Cowboys. This line open up -9 or -10. It's different spread in wherever you look. Like I see some -9.5s as well. So like I said, I like this game a lot. So I'm wondering if we're on the same side. So who do you like here?
You're probably going to like this game more than me because I'm pretty torn on this one right now. I mean, the Cowboys last week were terrible. I don't know what happened. They were down 30-0 in the fourth quarter and then got a couple garbage time touchdowns. I think they can bounce back against Atlanta. The Falcons are kind of overrated. Their defense is still an issue. I know that they're like, they just beat the Saints, and I think they're 4-4 on the season, which is better than I thought they'd be at this point. Credit to Arthur Smith for getting them there, but I'm just not sure that they're going to have the defense needed to contain the Cowboys and all their weapons. Michael Gallup might be back this week, so you're adding another good receiver to the mix. But there is one major injury concern for the Cowboys. Tyron Smith is out. He was out in the Broncos game. It doesn't sound like he's coming back this week. That's not confirmed by any means, but Dak Prescott has not performed well without his top left tackle before. Terrence Steele replaced him, and while Steele had done well at right tackle, his performance at left tackle against the Broncos wasn't as good. Prescott was under more heat, and he couldn't quite move around as much because he's dealing with that slight calf injury. I know it's not a big deal, but it was enough to hamper his mobility. So, if the Falcons had pass rushers that I thought could get home and rattle Dak Prescott like they did a couple years ago when Adrian Claiborne had, I think, 5 or 6 sacks against the Cowboys without Smith in, then I'd have more confidence in them. But I don't love the idea of backing them, especially because I think Dak Prescott is a good quarterback and the Cowboys are a good team coming off of a humiliating loss. They're going to want to bounce back. This is a home game, and they're playing a team that, has laid some eggs this year against good teams. And this is a revenge game for Dan Quinn, too. Don't forget that. He's going to want to, shut down that Falcons offense, and he should know how to do it after being the coach there for so long. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys here. I don't have a bet written down on this one yet because of the conflicting trends, and I'm just not, I don't know. I just don't feel good about this one. But if we're on the same side here, maybe you can convince me to bet it. But if we're on opposite sides, I'm going to have an existential crisis over here.
All right, no crisis. I'm on the Cowboys. I love the Cowboys this week. Something I love to do is bet good teams coming off embarrassing losses, and that obviously Dallas had an embarrassing loss to Denver, down 30-0, like you said, and then they got some garbage time points late in the game. But it seemed like Dak Prescott wasn't 100%. You were mentioning his troublesome calf. I've found that quarterbacks coming off injuries in the first game back just don't look good. And like we saw the same thing with Matthew Stafford. Now, granted, he didn't miss any time, but he was hurt during the week and he played, and he was also like pretty bad on Sunday night. This tends to happen a lot. And I feel like that's what happened with Prescott, and he's going to be a lot healthier this week. I saw that Tyron Smith might play. There's a chance he could. It's not guaranteed, but even if he doesn't, like I still think Dallas is going to rebound like very well. Kind of reminds me of they've blown out some teams this year, like the Giants. Remember that they hosted the Giants, they crushed them. They crushed the Eagles, hosting them as well. And the Eagles, Giants, and Falcons seem like they're sort of in that same pantheon. So it feels like the Cowboys should be able to kill the Falcons. The Falcons, like they're 4-4, but it's probably the most misleading 4-4 ever. They played 2 good teams this year with winning that currently have winning records. The Buccaneers, who destroyed them, and then the Saints, who I thought kind of were flat after beating Tampa. And let me read you the other teams the Falcons have played this year. The Eagles, who destroyed them, the Giants, Redskins, Jets, Dolphins, and Panthers. Those are their other games this year. And like none of those teams are good. They lost to the Eagles, Redskins, and Panthers at home. And so this team's not any good. Like they're not a 4-4 team. They're like 2-6, 1-7, really. Like if they had like a normal schedule, that's what the record would be. And if that's what the record would be, the spread would be a lot higher. I think it would be like, and also consider if Dallas didn't come off that loss to Denver, like the spread would be like -13.5, -14. And I feel like that's what it really should be. So I don't think these teams are anywhere close. I could see the only way the Falcons cover is via backdoor with Matt Ryan at the end, which he can do, which is like a slight concern. But outside of that, like I just don't see how the Falcons keep this game close. And a great point, by the way, on Dan Quinn. I forgot about that. So that's another reason why I like Dallas.
Yeah, frankly, I forgot about it too until I hopped on this podcast with you. So honestly, that kind of, the more I talk about Dallas, the more I like them. You kind of think through it because their only concern is they're without Tyron Smith, and they can get by without him against this type of defense. If Atlanta had pass rushers, I don't think Dante Fowler's healthy right now, but if he was healthy or if he was having a good year, then maybe you could say, all right, we're a little concerned about how Prescott might respond to that. But they don't have Atlanta doesn't have the horses, so I'll roll with the Cowboys with you. I'm probably going to end up betting on this one. I'll put a 1-2 mark on it for now, but as we check the injury report as the week goes along, if Tyron Smith sounds like he's going to be good, this could end up being a bigger bet.
Yeah, you're right about that. The pass rush, with Atlanta just not being there. I'm more in terms of pass rushes, I'm more concerned about Atlanta blocking Dallas. Like Atlanta's offensive line is not very good, and Dallas brings a lot of heat. Dallas's one weakness on defense is stopping the run. And the Falcons don't run the ball that well. So it just seems like Dallas has all the advantages, I think, in this game. So they're probably going to be one of my super contest picks, assuming there are no like crazy injuries or anything. All right, moving on. The Bills at the Jets. This line opened up Bills -13. It's still sitting at 13. Yet another big spread for the Bills. It feels like every week they have one of these. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Jets. This is a no bet for me, but this seems like a lot for a Bills team that's been struggling of late. I mean, if you look at who they've beaten this year, it's not that impressive. They've beaten the Dolphins twice, the Texans, they've beaten Washington, and then they beat the Chiefs, which, that's a big win. But the Chiefs also haven't been nearly as good as everyone thought they were going to be this year. They're kind of a train wreck that has somehow stayed afloat. So if they had like if their defensive and offensive issues had coincided at the beginning of the year, the Chiefs could be like one of the biggest disappointments in NFL history. So it's a good win, but it's not great. Meanwhile, they've lost to the Titans and Steelers and Jaguars, and I think the Titans are a good team. The Steelers are kind of middle of the road, and then obviously the Jaguars are terrible. I still don't know how they beat the Bills, but I mean, the Bills just aren't nearly, I don't think, what their record says they are. They haven't been beating world beaters, and they've struggled against teams that are actually good minus the Jaguars. I don't know if the Jets are good, but I think they can keep this close. Mike White sounds like he's going to play. We're not getting Zach Wilson back this week, it doesn't sound like, so we don't have to worry about him coming in and skipping passes the whole time. I know the Bills have a good defense, and they're going to be able to, hold the Jets to a certain number of points, but Mike White has shown pretty good accuracy, an ability to avoid turnovers. I think he's going to do enough to keep this within 13 points. I know that the Bills are coming off of an embarrassing loss, and as you just mentioned, it's fun to bet teams coming off of embarrassing losses or good teams coming off of embarrassing losses. But I think the Jets are going to be able to at least have a shot at a backdoor cover here. So I'm going to be on the Jets. I'm not going to bet on this, though, because I think, this could be a game where Buffalo comes out and it's like, all right, we got to shake off the rust and really get things going again. Because just a few weeks ago, we were like, they might be the best team in the AFC right now. But I think with how they've been playing lately, I'm skeptical enough to just give the Jets 13 points. Now, if this was a little bit lower, if we were getting into the 10 range, then I probably would switch to Buffalo. So I'm not super confident in this one. But I think I'm going to roll with the Jets right now.
So we're on opposite sides, but I don't like this game very much. I don't think I'm going to bet it. So I feel like we're getting a discount on the Bills, really. I mean, because they were -14.5 against the Jaguars last week on the road, and now they're only -13. And the Jaguars and Jets seem like they're pretty similar teams. Like I know Mike White is there, and like he's going to be fun. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does against a really good defense. But I'm concerned about Sean McDermott kind of giving him some looks and confusing him and forcing some turnovers. That's like a major concern I'd have. I think I'd be more concerned if Zach Wilson were starting, because Zach Wilson has been a disaster this year. Mike White played great in his one whole game, and he looked like he was getting off to a good start last week. But this is kind of a step up in competition for defense as far as that's concerned. It's going to be really tough for him, I think. He might have some turnovers. I'm rooting for him. I hope not, but I'm worried about that. So, I mean, I feel like the Bills are going to rebound. Like they have so much talent. I feel like they're going to put it together. It's a long season, the longest season ever. It's not too surprising to me that some of these teams are, having some midseason swoons here. But I think the Bills coming off a loss, I think they're going to be sharper. I think they're going to have a good game plan prepared. The Jets lost Marcus May, which is a huge deal for them. I mean, and he's one of their best defensive players. And they're missing two of their safeties. So I feel like Josh Allen should be able to hit some plays deep. And even if not, like he should be able to move the chains pretty well against the Jets, who just really don't have much going for them on really either side of the ball. So I like the Bills here, but like I said, I'm not too confident in this one.
Yeah, I think we both share sentiment. I forgot Marcus May tore his Achilles the other night, so that could make a little bit of a difference here. But I still think I'm gonna stick with the Jets here. But this isn't a game I was really into betting anyway, because the Bills have been kind of scaring me with double-digit spreads lately. Between the Dolphins game where it was like, how did they cover that? And then last week when they were 15.5-point favorites when the line closed, and there were 15 total points scored in the game. So, that's not usually an ideal scenario for the heavy favorite. But I'll roll with the Jets here, keep on the Mike White train. And that'll probably be the last time I'm with the Jets, because once Zach Wilson is back, I will want nothing to do with them.
I don't blame you. Speaking of Wilson, Tom asks, what does that say about Wilson? The Jets' second and third string quarterbacks have looked better than Wilson. That scares me. What do you think about that? Like, should Jets fans be kind of panicking about this?
I wouldn't panic too much. It's still a rookie season. Wilson always was going to need some development. I had in my quarterback rankings, I had him ranked 4th overall among the top 5. Potential wise, he could end up being the second best quarterback in this class, but I thought it was going to take him a year, maybe 2, to adjust to the NFL game. And we're kind of seeing the growing pains there. Maybe he's a Josh Allen type of development where, he's inaccurate, looks bad his first year, and then, the next couple of years take steps forward. But I think there's going to be a lot of pain with Wilson before you're going to see progress. So I think it's too early to panic. It's okay to be discouraged, but, you're really going to want to see what he does in his second year. If he doesn't show any growth between first year and second year, that's when I would start to panic.
Yeah, I feel the same way. A lot of rookie quarterbacks have struggles. I think Peyton Manning set the rookie record for interceptions. Troy Aikman won one game as a rookie. Josh Allen, you mentioned him. He struggled as a rookie. So a lot of these guys, they don't play well right away. Like Justin Herbert is pretty rare, like that doesn't always happen. So like you said, if Wilson's struggling like this next year, then you could start panicking. But then again, maybe they're starting Mike White and it doesn't matter. But yeah, it doesn't look good for Wilson. I didn't have him ranked this highly either. I had Justin Fields ahead of him. I would have taken Fields if I were the Jets, but Wilson has a lot of talent. With the issue with him right now is mental. And he seems like a smart guy. So I feel like he should be able to make adjustments later. But, then again, that may not happen. I think but it's still too early to say. All right, let's get to the next game. The Saints at the Titans. This line is either -3 or -2.5, depending on where you look. It's kind of hasn't moved at all. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Saints a lot in this one. I have them listed as a 2 to 4 unit bet right now. I know betting against the Titans hasn't been a winning strategy this year. They're 7-2 against the spread, 3rd best in the league right now. But fading them is the right move in week 10, because this is a tough matchup for the Titans offense. The Saints have the league's #1 run defense. They allow 73.8 yards on the ground per game. When they had Derrick Henry, you wouldn't pay much attention to that number, but now they're riding Adrian Peterson, Jeremy McNichols, and Deontay Foreman. Foreman looked okay last week. McNichols was catching some passes, and Peterson, I thought, was just readjusting to the game. I think Chris Collinsworth noted he was running with really high pad level. So I think you're going to see him get lower into his cuts now that he's taken a few hits. But it's going to be a tough matchup for them to get anything going. So you're asking the offense and Ryan Tannehill, basically, you've got to be our offense. You've got to carry this thing. And I don't think that's going to happen. And frankly, it didn't happen last week. The win over the Rams, offensively at least, was a bit of a mirage. The offense had under 200 yards of total offense. because the defense set up easy scoring plays for them. They had the Matthew Stafford pick that went to the 3-yard line. They got tackled and had one play to get it in the end zone. Then they had a pick 6. But aside from those two, the team scored 14 points against the Rams defense. And, the Saints have a pretty good defense. So I think they're going to be able to slow them down. And the Titans offense, I just wasn't impressed with them last week. They averaged 3.5 yards per play. It was very frustrating watching that as someone who had Matthew Stafford in fantasy and the Rams in the super contest, I believe we had. So I was just shaking my head at that. So unless the Titans defense has another huge game and can force some turnovers, which granted they could because Trevor Siemian is playing quarterback, but he hasn't turned the ball over yet. And he's got really good blocking. One of the problems with the Rams was Matthew Stafford was under pressure. The offensive line did not block well. The Saints have a much better offensive line. I think Sean Payton's going to have a better plan than whatever Sean McDermott was doing. Sorry, too many Seans here. Whatever Sean McVay was doing last week. I thought that game plan was atrocious, and they did not adjust nearly in time to move the pocket more. So I think the Saints will have a better plan in place. So I'm not sleeping on them here. I think they could beat the Titans. If we're getting them at +3, I really like them here. So this is one of my more confident picks of the week, and I'm hoping we're on the same side.
Yeah, we are. It's funny how things change in just a few days. Like late last week, like the spread after the Von Miller trade, it went from +4.5 to +7.5. I think the +4.5 was the advanced spread. So like this moved 3 points because Derrick Henry was gone. Like now the Titans were done. Like with at least until Henry came back, and the Saints are coming off, or I should say, the Rams are coming off, a big win, and so like everyone is loving the Rams. Like no one was betting Tennessee, and I actually like the Rams as well. And I like throughout Sunday, I thought about it more and more. I'm like, it just feels like too much of an adjustment. I feel like Tennessee is the right side. I ended up switching my pick, but here I definitely like New Orleans. Like this is another line adjustment. Like you said, Tennessee's win over the Rams is very misleading. Like first of all, Matthew Stafford was not healthy. He dealt with a back injury throughout the week. The offensive line wasn't blocking well, and that didn't help matters. And yet the Rams still outgained the Titans by like 150 yards. It was pretty insane. They averaged more yards per play. It was just those 2 interceptions that kind of decided the game. And so I think that doesn't bode well for the Titans heading into this game. Like they're 7-2. They're coming off a big win as an underdog. Now they're favored. I feel like this is kind of a letdown spot, whereas the Saints, they had a letdown spot last week. They just, they beat the Buccaneers 2 weeks ago. And then they were hosting the Falcons. They're like, they probably thought like, we could beat the Falcons. And, that's how they lost. It feels like this is going to be a very defensive game, like not enough points. And that usually tends to, favor the underdog as far as the spread's concerned. So I think this will be a close game. I really have trouble seeing Tennessee winning by more than a field goal against a really good defense without their top offensive player. And then their other top offensive player, AJ Brown's going to be matched up with Marshawn Lattimore. So you have to wonder, are the Titans going to be limited to fewer than 200 yards again? Like that could definitely happen. And if so, I don't think they're going to have as much luck this week. So I'm going to be on the Saints with you. I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, and I know there are people out there that are going to be like, Trevor Siemian, you really want to trust him, but this is a good team with a backup quarterback in, right. And they have so much support around him. Alvin Kamara's there. I know the receivers, they don't have Michael Thomas, obviously, but Marquez Callaway's played better in recent weeks, and they have enough guys that if you get the ball in their hands, they can make plays. So, I'm confident enough in the Saints to keep this close. I think they could win it, but if not, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a field goal game. So if we're getting the field goal, I really like the underdog.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely has to be +3. So, if you're betting in this game, I would definitely recommend getting up to +3, even if you have to pay like -125 big. All right, moving on to the next game. You have the Buccaneers at the Redskins. This line opened up -10. It's still -10. There's a 9.5 out there, but it's -10 for the most part. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Buccaneers here. I got 2 units on them. This is Bruce Arians and Tom Brady coming off of a bye with extra time to prepare against a bad team, and they're coming off of a loss. So all the motivation falls on the Buccaneers side, and they also know that the Saints are breathing down their neck now because they lost to the Saints. So they've got to do what they can to keep pace with them in the NFC South. And this is a good spot for them. I think they're going to be healthier. Maybe they get Gronk back. I don't think Antonio Brown's going to be back this week, but they have enough receiving weapons to really move the ball on this defense. I don't think there are going to be any significant changes from Washington on defense. They kind of don't have, unless they make some adjustments to the scheme or something. I think that they're going to have to make bigger adjustments than what the bye week can offer. So I think at 10 points, I don't love the number, but I think this could be a big spot for the Buccaneers. They're also going to remember what Taylor Heineke did to them in the playoffs last year. And, Heineke made it pretty close and made it seem for a little while like, hey, maybe Washington could knock out Tampa Bay. The second half, I think in the third quarter, it was tied at one point. So they're not going to take him lightly necessarily. And with the extra time to prepare, I think Bruce Arians is going to have a great game plan in place. So I like the Buccaneers here. I'm going to roll with them. Just everything seems to motivate them here.
Yeah, what a difference was it 11 months makes? That game was super tight. It was 31-23. I think Tom Brady went 22 of 40 passing. Barely 50% passing. But that Redskin defense was so much better than this one. Chase Young was incredible. They had some good secondary players, and now they don't. Their secondary really struggles. Chase Young is not the player he was in his rookie year. He's still playing well, but not the dominant force. Montez Sweat's injured. He's gonna be out. So the Washington defense is pretty bad. So it feels like the Buccaneers should be able to do whatever they want offensively. And then, I think I'm definitely going to be in Tampa, but my unit count is going to really depend on how many Redskin offensive linemen play. Sam Cosmi and Brandon Sheriff were both out for a few games heading into the bye. Then they lost Chase Roulier, their center, in that Denver game. So if Cosmi and Sheriff return, I'm not going to have as much interest in Tampa because I feel like Washington should be able to score pretty well. Even that said, though, the Redskins have played 3 teams in the top 10 of my power rankings this year, the Bills, Chiefs, and Packers, and they lost those games by 22, 18, and 14. So they really haven't been competitive against the top teams. They've beaten up on the Falcons. They beat, I shouldn't say beaten up, but they beat the Falcons at home. They beat the Giants, and that's about it. Those are their wins. So this is another top tier opponent. If they had their defense from last year, I could say, okay, this is going to be a close game, but they don't. So I think Tampa's going to win this game. But like I said, I want to see the injury report for the Washington offensive line.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the health of those two guys are, Cosby and Sheriff, but I know Sadiq Charles landed on the COVID list. So if he's out, that's one of the top backups too. So even if, say, Sheriff or Cosby returns, then you're still putting in, the depth there is a little bit cut up there. So yeah, definitely something to watch. And Roulier is one of the more underrated centers in the league. I covered Washington for a long time, and he was always rock solid, did a really good job, barely missed time. So they're going to miss him big time. I think Tyler Larson is their backup, and I think he's a decent veteran, but, he's not the same player that Roulier was.
Yeah, really is a good player. A lot of people don't know about him. And yeah, Washington's going to miss him a lot, especially if those other offensive linemen are out. So like I said, definitely something to keep an eye on. Going to update it later on in the week on walterfootball.com. Just check the picks pages for updates. Last of the early games, lines at the Steelers. This line opened up Steelers -9. There's some 8.5s popping up. So looks like there might be some sharp money coming in on Detroit. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Steelers. I'm not with the Sharps if there is sharp money on the Lions. I get it. The Steelers have not won many games by a lot of points. Most of their wins have been of the field goal to touchdown variety. But this is more of a fade of the Lions than anything else and how they match up with the Steelers. The Lions allow 134 rushing yards per game. That's the 4th most in the NFL. And they're one of only 2 teams to allow 16 touchdowns this year to running backs. They're going to have a lot of trouble containing Najee Harris. And the better Najee Harris plays against, or better he plays for the Steelers, the better they do in games. We saw it early against the Bears. He was running pretty well on that first drive. And that helped the Steelers build a lead in that game. Then as the game went along, the Bears kind of figured out how to slow him down and stop him. And that's how they got back in the game. The Lions aren't going to have anyone that can really do that. The Steelers offensive line starting to play a little bit better. and Harris is just going to be able to run like crazy over the Lions. So I think offensively, the Steelers could have their biggest point output of the season. They put up 29 last week against the Bears. That was the most they've had since the whole season, and most since they put 27 up on the Broncos. They could eclipse 30 against the Lions if they put their best foot forward, which I think they will. And the Steelers defense has been playing better lately too. And the Lions have averaged only 14.4 points per game since week 1. If you guys watch and remember week 1 when they were down big to the 49ers and then scored like 24 points in 4 minutes somehow. So the Lions offense is pretty punchless. I think Jared Goff's going to have trouble against the pressure from the Steelers because he's not as mobile as Justin Fields. He has better protection in front of him, but I still think he's going to be under a lot of heat. So I'm going to be on the Steelers here. I have 2 units written down right now. I have enough concern about the Lions being motivated coming out of their bye week, but I just don't think this is a good matchup for them. And I don't love the number on the Steelers, but, I could also envision them, having a really good game in all facets just because of how nice the matchup is.
I like the Lions. I just don't trust the Steelers team to win by double digits. They haven't done that all year. The biggest margin of victory this year has been 8. They beat Geno Smith by 3. They beat the Bears by 2. And, that was really aided by bad officiating. Like they could have easily lost that game if that touchdown wasn't overturned, if they didn't get that field goal because of the taunting penalty. Feels like the Bears could have won that game. And if the Bears did, this line would not be 9. I just can't trust the Steeler offense to produce. Like I know they scored 29 points, but like 14 points really came off short fields, off turnovers. And they, like I said, they got help from the officiating. I like even against Detroit, like in Detroit's defense is terrible. And I think you're right about Najee Harris. I think he's going to have a nice game. I just don't trust the Steeler offense to be consistent. Roethlisberger is pretty bad. He's getting sacked a lot. His offensive line just wasn't doing very well against Chicago. And the Lions still have Trey Flowers, so they can put pressure on Roethlisberger. So I think this is going to be a close game. And the Lions have been on, off this year. Everyone hated them after that Bengals blowout loss. And then they almost beat the Rams. And then everyone loved them after that Rams game. And then they got blown out by the Eagles. It feels like that's been their MO this year. And the Steelers, I feel like they might be flat. Like they're coming off an emotional win Monday night, very close game, short rest. And now they have this dreadful Detroit team. I don't know if they're going to take them seriously after that win. And even beating the Bears by 2 is not that impressive. I mean, it's just like not that long ago that the Bears are getting absolutely destroyed by Tampa. And they lost by double digits to San Francisco. So I think that win was a little misleading. Like the Steelers won, but they beat one of the worst teams in the NFL. So this again, Detroit's definitely the worst team in the NFL. Maybe Houston, but I just don't see them winning by 10. Like maybe they do off turnovers or something, but their offense isn't going to do it. Like it's just going to be another. I feel like this is going to be like a 20 to 16 game or something like that, where it's going to be close, and then Mike Tomlin's going to be at the press conference later saying, "We won an ugly game again. Like don't criticize us. We win ugly." It's kind of how the Steelers do it. Like they never covered these large spreads. So I like Detroit.
Yeah, you're not wrong about Mike Tomlin and what he likes to do after like he's got like this like list of things he likes to say after everything. But I'm gonna stick with the Steelers. I just think the matchups. I like all the matchups. There are a few that I don't like. I'm not a big Ben guy right now, but I think if they get Najee Harris going, he's not going to have to do a lot to move the ball. Because if you just get play action with him and with Freiermuth kind of emerging as this guy, he can target a tight end that's a little harder to track. I kind of like what they're doing there, but you're not wrong in that the spread is high considering what the Steelers have done this year. I'm probably going to fade the Lions the rest of the way unless they show some more punch under Campbell. I love Dan Campbell, but the talent just isn't there. So, this is one that I could picture. If Jared Goff can't get anything going on offense, this could end up being like, a 27-3 game. So I'll roll with the Steelers, but if we come back next week and it was a 20-16 game, then I'll have to take your advice about going every other week with the Lions.
So you're right about their talent, but they get someone back this week, and this goes along with what Joe Johnson said. Detroit's offensive line's terrible. Did you see what the Eagles' atrocious defensive line did to them? But they get Taylor Decker back this week, which I think is a big deal. So I feel like that's going to give them a little bit of a boost. They're still dreadful, but they'll at least be able to block a little bit better. So let's move on to the late afternoon games. Before we do, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. That would help us out a lot. This next game is the Vikings at the Chargers. This line is either -3 or -2.5. I feel like I've said that a lot this week. Like you have your pick basically. You just have to pay different juice depending on where you go with the number. Anyway, it is Vikings at Chargers. Chargers -3. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Chargers right now. I think that, this is kind of both teams are in a similar spot. The Vikings are playing the Packers next week, so they might look ahead a little bit to that divisional clash. But at the same time, the Chargers, they're coming off of a close win, a good one over the Eagles. But they are terrible against the run. They're the worst team in the league. They allow over 160 rushing yards per game. We saw Jordan Howard, Boston Scott run like crazy on them. I know Jalen Hurts was part of the damage last week too, so that has to be taken into account. Herbert's not nearly as mobile as him. Or, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused right now. Cousins isn't nearly as mobile as him. But, I still think, Dalvin Cook could do some serious damage in this one. So I do think this is going to be close. But at the end of the day, it comes down to who do you trust more in a close game, Kirk Cousins or Justin Herbert? I'm willing to give to Herbert this time, especially the line I was looking at is -2.5 for the Chargers. So I like them in this circumstance. I think they need to win more, knowing that one of the Raiders or the Chiefs is going to win as they play on Sunday night. So that could create even more of a logjam, regardless of the result. But the Chargers really need to win to stay atop of a logjam division. The Vikings are kind of slipping out of contention. So while I like that I like the matchup the Vikings have in the running game, I'm just not sure they're going to be able to, cover here. And they're coming off of an emotional overtime loss, might be deflated after blowing a 14-point second half lead. So I'm going to be on the Chargers here, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one because I did not have many units on this one.
Yeah, so we're on opposite sides. I like the Vikings. So someone pointed this out to me, a reader, Viking Steve, who's been a reader for a long time on the website. It's kind of crazy, outside of the Seattle game for Minnesota, every single game of theirs has been decided in the final 60 seconds this year, which is kind of crazy. So like every game is gonna be close. So that makes me want to like the +3 here because I feel like the Chargers winning by 3 or the Vikings winning by 3 or something like that is probably what's going to happen. The Chargers have kept most of their games close too. So they did have that ugly loss against Baltimore. So that's not true for every game, but most of their games have been decided at the end. So I feel like going with the underdog here is the right way to go. Although you're forgetting the -2.5, it makes sense to the Chargers. But with the Vikings, I feel like they're so underrated. They're 3-5 right now, but they lost to the Bengals in overtime in week 1 when Dalvin Cook fumbled. They lost to Arizona on the final second on the missed field goal. They lost to the Cowboys on a touchdown at the end, and they lost to the Ravens in overtime. It feels like instead of 3-5, they could be 6-2 right now. And like, imagine what the spread would be if that were the case. Whereas, the Chargers have been more lucky this year. Like they had that Antonio Gibson fumble recovery in week 1. They had all those bounces in that Chiefs game in week 3. They had all the Browns players go down with injuries in week 5. So it seems like the Chargers have been way luckier than the Vikings this year. So I think that's eventually going to regress to the mean with these teams. And so that's another reason why I like Minnesota. Also, what you were saying with Dalvin Cook is true. Like Cook could go nuts in this game. And the Chargers, they blitz a lot. They tend to. I think they blitz the 11th most in the NFL, and Kirk Cousins plays well against the blitz. So I feel like Cousins could do well also. And we'll see what happens with the Chargers cornerbacks. They were missing their top 2 outside cornerbacks last week. It really hurt them against the Eagles defense. Now they ended up winning, but the Eagles were scoring on almost every possession. So it feels like Minnesota should be able to put up points at will. So I think this is going to be like a 27-24, 34-31 type of game where it's going to be decided by a field goal. And yeah, the Chargers could win by 3 and you get the -2.5. But if I take the +3, I get both threes. So I like that from Minnesota. So it really depends on what line you get. So I'm leaning toward Minnesota.
Yeah, if the Chargers cornerbacks are continue to be banged up, then I'm gonna have a lot less interest in the Chargers, especially if the line, everywhere moves up to 3. If it gets to that point, then I might swap my pick because the Chargers do have some holes on defense. Kenneth Murray and Drew Tranquil at linebacker have been banged up in recent weeks too. I think if Drew Tranquil is back, he's a big difference maker. He's very fast, so I like having him around. But if they have stacked injuries on defense at multiple positions, I'm probably going to switch sides here. I wasn't big on this game because I think, I like the Chargers better as a team, and I think they should cover this. But like you said, Minnesota's been in games close late. So I'm a no bet on the Chargers for now, but check back with me on the weekend, and I might have the Vikings penciled in here.
All right, sounds good. This next game we're going to have to talk about later as well because we don't know who the quarterbacks will be for either side. It's Carolina and Arizona. This line is either -10 or -10.5, depending on where you look. It's -10 in most sports books. So who do you like in this game, considering that we don't know either quarterback?
Yeah, so this is very hard to handicap at this point. But I think I'll probably lean the Panthers if Sam Darnold doesn't play. Because if you look at how they played against the Patriots, they lost by 18, but it should have been significantly closer. Sam Darnold was a train wreck at quarterback. It was I'm watching as a Patriots fan who picked the Panthers against the spread. I'm like, wow, this is I'm very glad the Patriots are doing well, but what's going on with the Panthers here? They were not even bad on offense. They just had horrible turnovers. That J.C. Jackson turned one of them into a touchdown that gave the Patriots the advantage. But, if they avoid the turnovers, I think they had 3 total on the day, then the Panthers make that a lot closer of a game. The line will be different here. And, the Cardinals just won with Colt McCoy as their quarterback. So I feel like that's boosted this spread a bit. But the 49ers looked horrible in that game. They looked completely unprepared. It was like they saw Colt McCoy was starting, and Kyle Shanahan, who has coached Colt McCoy several times during his career, was like, I don't need to pay attention. I know Colt like the back of my hand. And then, they got just absolutely run over because that Cardinals team is talented. So I think, if you get Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins back, part of me wants to say Arizona should win this one big, but you mentioned this earlier. Quarterbacks in their first game back from injury tend not to do as well. So I think that if Murray's back, it might take him some time to readjust to the field. He may not be as mobile. Brian Burns may be able to get some pressure on him. And the running game for the Cardinals isn't going to be nearly as strong. James Conner looked like the second coming of Jim Brown last week. And the Panthers run defense is pretty good, so they should be able to slow him down. So as long as we're getting 10 here, I kind of like the Panthers here. I got 1 unit on them penciled in, knowing absolutely nothing about the quarterback situation. The Panthers did sign Matt Barkley today, which leads me to believe that Darnold won't play because he has a shoulder injury. Again, if he doesn't play, I like it better because I think that they're less likely to have turnovers. And if they do have turnovers, they're less likely to be of the horrific pick 6 type. So I got the Panthers penciled in right now. But all that's subject to change once we know what's going on here.
Well, I like how we have the colors of this game. I'm blue and you're red here. And it's
Yep.
the same order too. Okay, Panthers and Cardinals. Yeah, we don't know who's going to start for the Panthers, but that signing that you just mentioned is a good sign that Philip Walker is going to play. I like the Panthers a lot more with Walker. I mentioned this last week too. I was hoping for Walker to play in our podcast episode last week. I kind of assumed that Walker was going to start. And then it was Darnold, and kind of got off that, and in the Super Contest, just didn't want any part of Darnold against Belichick, and I don't want any part of Darnold here. Not that it's a tough matchup for him. With the Arizona being shorthanded without JJ Watt, it's just that Darnold is kind of like what you were saying with Kyler Murray. Playing in his first game, not a first game back from injury, but playing injured. It could mean that he's going to be limited and he's going to have more turnovers. He's dealing with a shoulder problem. So if he's not 100%, I don't want to back someone like that. And Philip Walker has basically almost no tape. Like he's played just a few games in his career. So Arizona is not going to have like the full game plan ready for him, especially with a game against Seattle coming up next week for the Cardinals. I feel like they could be looking ahead, especially coming off a big win as an underdog, like an unexpected underdog. They were favored to start the week, and then they were almost 6 point underdogs against San Francisco because Colt McCoy. So as far as Arizona is concerned, I like Carolina either way. It really doesn't matter to me who starts the quarterback, because if Kyler Murray starts, like you said, he may not be 100%. Especially like it doesn't sound like Hopkins is 100% either, and it's not like Arizona's coming out and saying, "Oh, Murray's ready, he's ready to go." Like he's undecided right now. So I imagine he's going to miss practice, and that's going to hurt. So if it's Colt McCoy, now I usually like betting good teams with backup quarterbacks, but that's only if the line is over adjusted. And here it's not. Like you're asking Colt McCoy to win by double digits. I know he did that last week, but that's not going to happen very often, especially against a really good Carolina pass defense. So I like Carolina either way, but I'm going to be betting more units on them if it's Phil Walker starting instead of Darnold.
Yeah, and you mentioned this. The game against Seattle looming is huge because I think that does two things. One, it gives Arizona more incentive to sit Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins in this game because they'd rather have them healthy for a potentially important divisional matchup. And two, Arizona's 8-1 right now. And you mentioned this at the beginning of the show where, teams kind of get to a point and they're like, oh, we can afford a loss because they divide the season up by quarters. Now, I know this would technically be the start of a new quarter here, but Bruce Arians, man, I am having trouble today. Cliff Kingsbury is going to look at this upcoming matchup and say, hey, do we want our guys to be fully healthy and ready to go against Seattle, or do we want to try to rush them back to try to get a win over Carolina, which would be good, but it's not entirely necessary. So I think -10 on the Cardinals here, I'm not into. I'll be on the Panthers, I think. Either way, but if Sam Darnold plays, I have no interest in betting on Sam Darnold. I don't want to touch him. He's looked so bad the last 6 weeks.
He's so bad. If he were healthy, 100% healthy, I'd be okay with it. But he's looked terrible, and he's not going to be healthy. So it's like, why? Like, I don't want any part of that either. You make a good point. Like, they could be like, we just won with Colt McCoy. We can win with Colt McCoy again and be a little overconfident. I think Arizona could lose outright here if that's the case. Especially against Phil Walker. But we'll see. I like the points either way. Moving on to, I guess, the biggest game of the week, the Seahawks at the Packers. The line opened up Packers -5.5. It's down to 3 because of the Russell Wilson news. Wilson is going to play in this game, sounds like. And it sounds like Aaron Rodgers will too, although we don't really know that yet. It looks like there is sharp money on Seattle, and my guess is that it's because it's kind of a hedge in case Rodgers doesn't get cleared. Like, I wonder if Rodgers has to sit out again. You're getting Seahawks +3 with Jordan Love on the other side, which seems great to me. So I think that's the reason why we're seeing sharp action on Seattle. So anyway, who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I had a lean on Seattle in this one. If Aaron Rodgers is able to play, obviously, this is, I think, the correct spread. But if it's Jordan Love, like you said, it's possible. Aaron Rodgers even said, there's a small chance that he won't be cleared to play this week. I don't know if we're going to know that before Saturday, but I kind of can't imagine that he won't be cleared at this point, given what he said on the Pat McAfee show today. But I think this is just a tough matchup for both teams. They're coming out. They're going to have divisional matchups after this one. I know the Seahawks have a worse defense than the Packers right now is currently constructed, but the Packers might be without their top 2 corners. Jair Alexander's on IR, and last week Eric Stokes was out of action because he suffered an injury in pregame warmups. So we don't know how he's going to do. He's been really great as a first-round rookie, and his absence made it all the more surprising that the Chiefs could only score 13 points against them. That was just shocking to me once I heard Stokes was out and they didn't do anything. But that's a conversation for later. Obviously, those 2 absences would matter big time against Metcalf and Lockett with Wilson back. But as you mentioned, the whole deal with quarterbacks coming back from injury, Russell Wilson's come back from a surgery in his throwing hand, and it was supposed to take a lot longer than this to heal. Like, he's beaten the timeline for recovery. So it's a little bit kind of scary where you're like, oh man, if I bet on the Seahawks and Wilson takes a long time to adjust and figure out how to throw the ball in game, or has any sort of issue or setback, then you're kind of like, ooh, this may not look so good. So I'm not going to be big on this one until later in the week, which could come back to bite me if Rodgers is ruled out. But I've still got the Seahawks penciled in. I've got 0 to 2 units written down right now. I just think Russell Wilson is going to be motivated to win this one if he comes back or when he comes back. So I'm going to roll with that, even though I don't like trusting quarterbacks coming off an injury.
Yeah, that bothers me a lot. Like the fact that he beat the timeline so quickly and now he's coming back like out of the blue, really. Like I thought there was a chance he would come back, but like to suddenly say that, oh, he's back, he's 100%, like I'm not really buying it. Like maybe he is, like it could be the case, but I really need to see Wilson play a good game before I trust betting him. So I'm definitely not going to be in Seattle. And I actually think the motivation favors Green Bay in this game because Aaron Rodgers has gotten so much flack from the media. I feel like he's going to be in FU mode. And like, you know, as we've discussed throughout the year, a big like indicator for how the Packers are going to do is how focused Rodgers is going to be. You know, he checks out sometimes once in a while, like he did in the season opener. So I feel like Rodgers is definitely going to be motivated to beat Seattle. And yeah, I feel like he should be able to do whatever he wants to against Seattle's defense. I really don't think the Seahawks can do anything to stop him. Whereas the Packers, their defense has been better than expected. They're weaker against the run. Whereas Seattle depends on its passing game now. Like Alex Collins could have a nice game here, but I still like the Packers with Wilson coming back from injury. But we'll see. I mean, like who knows? Maybe it's going to be Jordan Love again, and then we'll have a completely different point spread. I feel like the Seahawks are definitely going to be favored if that's the case.
Yeah, that's my one worry, and that's why I have the Seahawks written down right now. Because if you were like, you have to make a bet today, I would go with the Seahawks because just the possibility that Jordan Love starts, and Jordan Love looked terrible. You know, I did not like what I saw at all. He threw very ugly looking passes for most of the game, and you know that's kind of what we saw from Jordan Love when he was at Utah State. Like a lot of scouts, or you know, internet scouts and people that evaluate draft prospects were like, "Oh, his ceiling's super high. He could be like Patrick Mahomes." And I was like, "No, I don't see that. Like, it's gonna take a long time to get there." And you know, maybe they could see into the future, and they were comparing him to the Patrick Mahomes we saw last week because they looked kind of similar. But yeah, I'm not ready to trust Jordan Love. But if Rodgers does come back, I might switch to my pick to the Packers because I agree with you in that he will be in FU mode because all he's had to do for the last 2 weeks is answer questions about this. And he's gone on the Pat McAfee show like 3 times to talk about this. And every single time it's been like, I've just been like, all right, what's Aaron going to say this time? What's he got coming out? How's he feeling? How's he dealing with this? And it sounds like he's ready to, his big message, I think it was today. He was like, all right, I'm ready to get back and play football. So he's really ready and raring to go. So if he does come back, yeah, I'll probably switch my pick to the Packers. But well, this is a wait and see for me. I just don't want to get caught betting on Jordan Love as a favorite by accident.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. So yeah, if you're going to bet the Packers, wait until that news because Jordan Love was terrible. I was asked about Jordan Love like on an Arizona radio show after the draft. And I was like, if like the Packers really wanted to draft a worse version of Jameis Winston, they should have just signed Jameis Winston.
Yep.
Like it just he was miserable. And yeah, we both had the Packers in that game, the +7, and we were like, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I had a feeling that they were just going to land on 0 the whole time. Like, and that late touchdown at the end, I think it was on 4th down too. I was like, just such a miracle. Like things have been going against us all year, and that finally was like, okay, maybe things are turning around.
Yeah, I felt I had given up on my entire slate at that point in the day. So I was just like, all right, whatever happens, happens. But I was like, they're going to get shut out. I was all I could think. They're going to get shut out against the terrible Chiefs defense.
Yeah. Michael asking, anyone in here got any money in Shiba Inu coin? Fortunately, I don't. I have some Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it's mostly stocks like AMC and GameStop and Vinco Ventures and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know about you.
I do not. I do not have it. I've tried to wrap my head around the idea and I still can't quite get there. I've had it explained to me numerous times.
Yeah, I don't blame you. All right, last of the late afternoon games, Eagles at the Broncos. This is another one where you can get either -3 or -2.5 on either side. So this is my favorite pick of the week. So I'm wondering if we're on the same side.
Oh boy. Okay, I have the Eagles down. This was a line I looked at and I was like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna write down what I think and then roll with this with not a unit count even listed. But I think the Eagles this side, like the Broncos just destroyed the Cowboys, but I don't know if that momentum is gonna carry over. And I don't know. I watched them play and like they just are without so many pieces. They traded Von Miller, and I think that last game was all about like, hey, like we don't have Von Miller anymore. We got to step up. And they did it. And they got their big win. So I could see a letdown game here because they're playing another NFC East team that they don't see very often. They're at home. The Eagles have been very up and down this year. So I could see them just being like, all right, like we can handle this. We handled the Cowboys. They crushed the Eagles. We'll be doing well here. I know Denver's a tough place to play, but the Eagles are kind of finding an offensive identity. They're running the ball, which they didn't do for like most of the season before the last 2 weeks. And they've been able to stay in games more. And I know they just had a tough loss against the Chargers, so they could be a little deflated, but I think that they match up pretty well against this Eagles team. Or against this Broncos team. They're going to be able to run the ball, control the clock. And I don't think Broncos front seven doesn't have anyone that I think could stop Jalen Hurts on the run. And I think that's going to be a big problem for them. They're also going to probably be without Patrick Surtain in the secondary. And I know that they have a lot of depth at corner, but still they're going to be missing a talented piece. So I like the Eagles here, and I just don't think that the Broncos should be 3-point favorites. They lost an offensive lineman too. I think Graham Glasgow broke his leg, so they're a little bit thinner up there. So I think I'm going to roll with the Eagles. They've been playing better with their offensive line healthy, and I think they'll find a way to run the ball on the Broncos.
Yeah, I love the Eagles. It just seems like the Broncos have so many injuries. It's insane. They have Bridgewater and their skill position players healthy, but like everyone else is hurt. Like Garrett Bowles was out. They lost Glasgow on the offensive line. On defense, they're missing the 2 outside linebackers, the 2 inside linebackers. They're down their slot cornerback, Bryce Callahan. They were down Mike Purcell, a defensive lineman, and now they lost Patrick Surtain. So they have so many injuries. Like it feels like they have such a skeleton crew. And they beat Dallas, and everyone's impressed by that. The advanced spread on this game was -4.5, so it's up to 3. So everyone's hyped up about the Broncos right now. And I have to remind you, there are 3 games prior to playing Dallas. They struggled to beat Washington. They needed 2 blocked field goals to escape with a win. They got blown out by the Raiders, and they also lost to Case Keenum on Thursday Night Football. So like this team's not very good, and I think people have forgotten about that. Whereas the Eagles have played so many tough teams this year. They played the 6-2 Cowboys, the 5-4 Chiefs, the 6-2 Buccaneers, the 5-3 Raiders, the 5-3 Chargers. Those are tough teams that they played, and they beaten up on the softer teams. Like they went into Atlanta and demolished them. They went into Detroit as only a 3.5-point favorite, and they crushed Detroit. And they beat the Panthers on the road. So it feels like Detroit, Denver, and Carolina kind of like the same sort of team. I feel like I think Carolina might even be a little bit better. So I think the Eagles should be able to beat the Broncos. And Denver ran so well against Dallas last week, and they won't be able to do that against the Eagles, who have a really good run defense. The past 2 games, the Eagles stopped DeAndre Swift and Austin Eckler, so they should be able to contain the run, which means Bridgewater is going to have to throw in long distance situations, which is going to be bad news for him. So especially behind an offensive line missing 2 starters. So I feel like the Eagles should be able to win this game. I think by like double digits even.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. It feels like a good matchup. And the problem I have with the Broncos is I constantly forget on that defense who is hurt because I lose track of it because Teddy Bridgewater has this insane way of being able to cover spreads all the time. But yeah, no, this is a terrible spot for them. I can't see them being motivated for this game. Javonte Williams basically said like, hey, them trading Von Miller, like everyone was like, hey, we got to step up with him out. That happened against Dallas, but it's going to be a lot harder for them to do it a second consecutive week against the Eagles. And like you said, it's just not a good matchup. So it's going to be Jalen Hurts running the ball against Teddy Bridgewater having to throw the ball a lot. So yeah, I could see the Eagles winning this one. So I will be joining you with an unspecified unit count, but definitely the Eagles look like the right side.
Yeah, I think you're right about this spot being bad for them. They're coming off an emotional win. I know it wasn't close, but they were big underdogs. They won in Dallas. They're super high right now, and now they're favorites. It's kind of like a weird dynamic shift. Whereas the Eagles, this is their season right now. I mean, they're 3-6. They still have a chance at a wild card. I feel like Atlanta is a wild card of 4-4, and they've beaten the Falcons this year. So if they get to their fourth win and Atlanta loses, they're only a half game really out of a wild card spot. But if they lose this game, they're 3-7, and now they don't really have a chance. So it feels weird with this expanded playoff schedule and overall schedule, saying a 3-6 team is fighting for the playoffs. But I guess that's where we are in like these days. All right. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, the Chiefs at the Raiders. So this is a weird one where I can't say -3 or -2.5 because I only see -2.5s. The advanced spread was -3. So the Sharps, I think, took the Raiders here. So the Chiefs at the Raiders, it's -2.5 across the board. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I love the Raiders here. I mean, what is wrong with the Chiefs? They looked horrible against the Packers. Packers down their top two cornerbacks. And really, like just the skeleton core secondary where it's Kevin King out there. And, Kevin King's gotten burned constantly and they couldn't move the ball at all. They scored 13 points against them. And, a muffed punt by the Packers set up at least some of them. So the Chiefs, their offense is now completely fallen apart. Their defense, some people might say, oh, they've been playing better lately. They've allowed 16 points per game in the last 4 games. They have a 3-1 record. And it's like, all right, yeah, that's true. But have you seen the quarterbacks the defense has faced during that time? You've got Taylor Heineke, Daniel Jones, Jordan Love, and Ryan Tannehill. And in the game against Ryan Tannehill, they allowed 27 points. So, yeah, this Chiefs defense can hold up against bad quarterbacks, but that's about it. And I just don't know what's wrong with their offense. They have to snap out of it eventually, you think, but Patrick Mahomes has looked bad and defenses just seem to have figured him out right now. I don't know if Andy Reid or Eric Bieniemy is trying to find some way out of this, but he's not making those same splash plays. He's not moving around as much in the pocket, and his receivers, he's got Kelsey and Hill, but teams are doubling them and taking them away. So I think the Raiders are going to try to do as much of that as they can and say, hey, Patrick Mahomes, you've got to beat us with your, tertiary options. Can you do that? And I'm not entirely convinced that they will. The Chiefs have been just easy money fading them the last 2 seasons. They're only covered 35.7% of the time. I know trends don't matter that much, but the fact of the matter is I think people still have an inflated opinion of the Chiefs. Like, I don't think that they've proven to be that good this year. They've beaten weaker competition, but most of their games have been close. And I'm not a huge Raiders guy by any stretch of the imagination, but those quarterbacks they played recently, most of them being bad, Derek Carr is better than them. So I'm willing to roll with them. And I think it's going to be tough for the Chiefs to play in the Death Star. The Raiders are going to be super motivated for this one. Their crowd's going to be super motivated. They're going to be smelling blood. They know, hey, if we beat the Chiefs here, we're going to be in a situation where we're in first place and the Chiefs are chasing us. So I think the motivational edge belongs to the Raiders along with the home field advantage. I wish we still had +3 on this one, but I think the Raiders could win outright. So I'm going Raiders +2.5 or 2 to 3 units. I'm depending on if this line doesn't move, I could take less juice to move this up to +3. I could tease this with something else too and get +8.5 on the Raiders because I think this is going to be I mean, I don't think there's any way that they lose by more than a touchdown here. So I'm rolling with the Raiders. There's no reason to go with the Chiefs until they give you a reason not to fade them.
Yeah, they need to look better. I mean, they've looked so miserable, even against the Giants and the Packers. And it feels like the Raiders have had their number sort of recently. Last year the Raiders went into Kansas City and won in the first matchup, and then in the second matchup, the Raiders were winning most of the game, and the Chiefs ended up winning. On a last second or last minute Patrick Mahomes touchdown drive. And it seems like such a different, Chiefs team like that we saw last year when Mahomes was making all these great plays, like you were saying, like the enemy is designing all these awesome plays for them. But it seems like they should be able to get out of this. Like the teams just aren't blitzing them and they're taking away all the deep plays. The Chiefs should be able to just run the ball like nonstop. And Troy Aikman even like talked about that during last week's game where, Andy Reid just wasn't running the ball enough. But in this matchup, it might be difficult to do that because the Raiders are pretty decent against the run. So I don't know if they can get out of their funk in this game. So I kind of like the Raiders here. They're coming off a loss to the Giants, which is, I was talking to a Raiders a fan friend of mine during a Halloween party I was at on Saturday. He was like, he's super overconfident. He's like, oh, the Raiders are on bye this week. They have the Giants. I'm like, I should have known then to bet the Giants heavily. The Raiders were flat, I think, off the Henry Ruggs news. Plus, they had the Chiefs coming up. And even though they lost, they still outgained the Giants and averaged more yards per play. So it's kind of misleading win or misleading loss. Derek Carr threw some bad interceptions. He's going to play better in this game. Kansas City's defense can't stop the run. I feel like Josh Jacobs is going to have a great game. So yeah, I'm on the Raiders here. Albeit cautiously, because it could be any week where Mahomes snaps out of it and just has like a 400-yard game where he scores 40 points. Like I feel like that could happen anytime. So with that in mind, I'm going to be on the Raiders for maybe a couple units.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. I think if this game was in Kansas City, I would be a lot more skeptical of the Raiders here. But I think playing in Vegas is going to give them a pretty big edge. And like you mentioned, last week they had every reason to be distracted. Henry Ruggs, that whole scenario was unfolding, and Damon Arnett too. He was kind of doing some crazy stuff off the field too, and now he's gone. So I feel like Mike Mayock is kind of sending a message with the release of Arnett. And obviously they had to release Ruggs because he's probably going to go to jail. But it's just, they've gotten kind of their distraction game out of the way. They've had time to cope with it. And I think now they're going to be super motivated. They're going to be able to say, hey, we have Kansas City. We can beat them here. So I'm excited to watch this game because I want to see more of the Chiefs to see if I can diagnose what exactly is plaguing them. And how they might be able to fix it aside from running the ball, which would be a good start, but you can't trust Andy Reid to do that. But I'm excited to see this one for sure. I think it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, Andy Reid's a great coach, but that's his one thing. Or also, I should say, time management at the end of halves. But yeah, he just doesn't run the ball nearly as much as he should. And they're having some nice gains against the Packers on the ground with Darrell Williams and Derek Gore. They just weren't running the ball nearly enough. And that nearly hurt them. I mean, they almost lost to Jordan Love. So, yeah, I feel like the Raiders are on the right side. Moving on to the Monday night game, the Rams are at the 49ers. This line opened up, Rams -4.5. It's down to 4 with sharp action coming in on San Francisco. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I have the Rams with a no bet next to this one right now. I want to know how healthy Matthew Stafford is before putting a bet on this one, because I don't want to take, a more than field goal favorite team with an injured quarterback. It's not fun to do that. And I know the 49ers have performed badly lately. They're injured. They're dealing with problems on the offensive line. Mike McGlinchey is now out, I believe, for the season. And Trent Williams has been banged up in recent weeks too. So the tackle situation there concerns me against a really good pass rush that's adding Von Miller. So, on paper, I really like the Rams. I like what they're doing. But if Stafford isn't healthy and he plays and he's dealing with back and ankle injuries now because he twisted his ankle a bit in that Titans game, it's going to be a lot harder to trust them in this spot. And so I'm on the Rams tentatively here, but I'm going to be paying close attention to the injury report this week. And if there's any concern with Stafford, I may flip to the 49ers because, I know that they had a really bad loss against the Cardinals last week, but this is still a divisional game. They're still the home team. They still have some talent. And if they can find a way to move the ball on the Rams defense, they can keep it close.
Yeah, I like the Niners, depending, of course, on Stafford's health. I don't know if he's going to be 100%, but like if he practices fully all week, then I probably won't bet this game, but I still may be on San Francisco. The Niners have dominated this rivalry over the years. It's kind of a weird situation. I wonder if it was because of Jared Goff. Now that the Rams obviously have a better quarterback, it seemed like Jared Goff always struggled against the Niners defense, and of course Robert Saleh is not there anymore either. The Niners have some issues like on defense, but they're coming off such an embarrassing loss, to the Cardinals. It was like their effort. Like I don't think they tried hard at all. Like you mentioned it earlier, where Kyle Shanahan probably thought he could beat Colt McCoy easily, and he just didn't have a good game plan prepared. The Niners didn't look like they were trying very hard. And I feel like coming off such an embarrassing loss, I feel like they're going to try a lot harder against the Rams. And this is the divisional game. It seems like these teams always play close games, even when like one team has way more injuries. Like last year, the Rams and 49ers, the Niners had so many injuries, and yet there was still only a 3-point game. So I like the Niners here to rebound. I like the line value we're getting in San Francisco. The advanced spread on this game is -3. It opened 4.5, so we were getting even more line value, and the sharps took the 4.5. So I like the 4. I like getting the 3 and the 4. Obviously a major key number and a minor one. So yeah, I like the Niners here, but like I said, you have to kind of look at the injury report. If Stafford misses practices or if he's like limited, definitely going to be in the Niners for a few units.
Yeah, if Stafford's limited, if he's limited multiple days, I'll probably end up being on the 49ers. I won't want to bet it in that circumstance, though, because I feel like the Rams should hypothetically bounce back after a loss to the Titans. Not that that was an embarrassing one, but it was a poor performance on national television where Sean McVay looked foolish. Frankly, I was very upset watching that game. First half, just like, all right, we're gonna have Matthew Stafford drop straight back. It's like, all right, that's not working. It's like, all right, we'll fix it at halftime. It's like, no, you don't have time, do it now. But some, like you said earlier, they were 7-1 going into that game, so they could kind of afford a loss. So once they got down and Stafford was banged up, it's kind of like, all right. But I think that they should bounce back. But if Stafford's not healthy, then the 49ers at +4 look pretty nice.
Yeah, we definitely agree about that. So let's get to Survivor. I'm going to put your picks up here. So someone at the beginning of the show said that our Survivor picks are killing him, but he was talking about me because you survived last week with the Colts week 9. So we both got eliminated week 8, but you, at least, if you're in a second chance or if you could buy back, which, some pools allow you to do, you survived, with your second life with the Colts. I did not. I had the Cowboys, who lost to the Broncos. Did not think that was going to happen. So week 10, if for some reason you're still paying attention, I like the Steelers here because this is the only time you're going to be able to take them. I know like the Lions are +9, but I feel like the Steelers are going to find some way to win by like 3, 4, 6, 7, stuff like that. It's going to be a close grinder, kind of like they always do, but the Steelers defense should be able to lead them to victory, even though they're on a short week. So I like the Steelers here. So I'm interested to hear who you have.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers as well. Not to be a copycat here, but like you said, it's the only time you can really use the Steelers, and I've already used the Bills and Buccaneers. So they're kind of the other ones that I'd have. The only other option I could really see and be interested by would be the Cowboys over the Falcons. I think that they would be able to pull that one off. But I think there are some other spots in which you can use the Cowboys because I don't think they've played Washington yet this year. So I would imagine they would at least win the home game against Washington. So roll with Pitt here. And, if the Lions get the upset and knock me out for the second time in this Survivor advice thing, good for Dan Campbell.
All right, sounds good. Let's get to the teaser. So you mentioned the Raiders at +8.5 being a nice teaser leg. I like that as well, but I like these two a little bit more. The Browns +7.5, betting up from 1.5. It seems like the Patriots, if they win, it's going to be a close game. They've only beaten the Jets and the Panthers this year by more than 3 points. So I don't see them beating the Browns by 8 or more. So I really like Cleveland at +7.5. And then the Vikings at +8.5. I mentioned how every game of theirs, except for their blowout win over Seattle, has come down to the last 60 minutes. And the Chargers have played close games too. So, even if Cousins is down, like he's going to have a late touchdown touchdown to get you the cover in this teaser. So this is my teaser: the Cleveland and Minnesota.
Yeah, I love both of those. I might actually, maybe I'll toss on the Vegas as a third leg in this one, do a 3-team teaser, get really crazy this week.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, that is it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Kamenker. I will tweet out some of my favorite picks of the week. I'll tweet out my betting article, which was shelved last week because the NFL went crazy and had massive breaking news stories every day. So didn't have time to get around to that. Promise that's coming back this week. It's probably a good thing it wasn't around last week anyway, since I did so poorly. So you can thank me for not doing that. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at Jacob Kamenker. Check out sportingnews.com for all your latest NFL news and fantasy advice. And yeah, that's all I got.
Sounds good. I think it'll be a bounce back week. So here we go. I'm at watsonfootball.com. Tons of draft content from Charlie Campbell. My mock draft will be updated Wednesday morning as usual. We have pick updates throughout the week: Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday for the Monday night game. Fantasy rankings and start 'em, sit 'em. If you're doing well in your year-long league. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the merch store. If you're watching on YouTube, I am wearing a Walter Football light blue shirt. Like I said, you can get any color you want. So feel free to do that and help us out. That would help us out a lot. So that is it for this week. I will talk to you next week.
All right.